Take One podcast.
Now is the time to take action. Now's the time to do more and be more.
So I rocked my Canadian tuxedo today for a reason. One, because the next season of Yellowstone is coming out soon. Two, because I know that my wife loves this outfit. And she is the guest on the podcast today. So I'm bringing on, again, the Mrs. Smith, Dani, my wife, to talk about all kinds of stuff today. Her wheelhouse at the gym, and her specialty is nutrition. Fuel was what we like to call it, because we really believe that the fuel is what you need for your workout, and I have really been leaning on this over the last 6 months. I've really dialed in my nutrition, my training, and some of my aesthetic goals too, to be honest with you. So welcome to the show, Dani.
Oh, thank you for having me. Your Canadian tuxedo is very inviting.
Yeah, roll right up there so we can hear you. Okay, so Irvin's finally got the camera set up. Apologize for the last couple of shows, guys. I hope you made it through. We had a real audio problem. We realized that. We corrected it on this show and last show, hopefully. So let's get rolling. So we want to talk about, first, let's talk about, we're just finishing up. Literally, today is the last day of the shred. And tomorrow morning, we'll be in this very room. We'll be scanning 100 people or whatever it's going to be, 60 people with Ben Graham, who's always here for the shred. And something I noticed, and I was talking, Marcella is down there. She's one of our part-time trainers, one of our, like, the people's favorite, I guess, or the people love to hate Marcella. And she's down, I think, over 15 pounds, she said. But this time what I'm noticing in people is it's not like as noticeable, Marcella's change. It's like a very, the pounds that people are losing, it's very noticeable in how they look. Did you like tweak with the body composition or something? People just, the results seem more drastic without, the numbers don't match how different they look, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I agree with you. I do think that essentially people, when they think of transformation, they always think of like how many pounds they anticipate to lose when they're doing a shred or transformation. So I think that when tweaking numbers, I'm always tweaking numbers. I'm always looking to make things better or more optimal. So yes, the participants had more protein this time around.
Yeah, a few people have mentioned that to me, and not, you know what? Honestly, people hadn't complained about being hungry as much, is what I've also found in my team. Yeah,
I think that every time I do a program, I try to make it. I have to make it for the masses, so I have to make it as best I can for most people. Sometimes people have issues with one thing or another, whether it's they feel hungry or whether something doesn't agree with them, and that's bound to happen no matter what. Everyone's different. Everyone has such a different starting point before they even start the transformation. So the tweaking happens based off of the feedback that I get, and then that's what I do going forward, is to try to make it even better for all of the participants going forward. So hopefully everyone is happy with that part of it, of the looks versus perhaps losing more weight, but we will see, I guess, once the scans happen.
I mean, I shouldn't say losing, 15 pounds in 6 weeks for a person Marcella's size is pretty drastic, but I think she's a great case study. I have another guy on my team, Nick. Nick has got to be close to 50 years old, I think. He's a little bit older than me.
Watch yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I know I'm 43, and I know he's a little bit older than me, so he's got to be somewhere in that realm. And his results, too, have been insane, and he says he feels the best he's ever felt, and he's down, 20 pounds. And Nick was not a big dude, either. Nick is somebody who walks around less than I do on a normal day. So for him to lose 20 pounds, I usually walk around at 185, 190. It's pretty crazy. So Marcella's a good case study. Marcella is somebody who has a huge foundation of fitness, and somebody who's generally walks around probably right around her body weight right now. She was coming off of her 100-mile race. She's strength training is her thing, but she's also got an incredible background for endurance. She comes off that 100-mile race, cracked her foot, had all kinds of knee problems. So she, I think it was a blast, and she had kind of started leading into this. So her ball was rolling before she jumped into the 6 weeks. So I think she kind of just ran that momentum in, and then the 6 weeks just really motorboated and speeded that thing right up. Is that kind of how that works with people? 6 weeks is if people keep going beyond the 6 weeks is where they're really truly going to see results. We choose 6 weeks because it's just very hard to keep people engaged past that.
So I think that with Marcella or with people who are used to doing some type of tracking or used to doing some kind of diet or tracking their macros or what have you, certainly they are going to get off to a really good start, and certainly they are going to notice a big difference right off the hop. Whereas if you have beginners in the transformation, which we always have a lot of beginners as well, it takes them a little while. So yes, I would say that 6 weeks is a long enough time for both of those prototypes. But I think that with, like you said, Marcella coming off of already like a huge amount of work, plus trying to recoup back to, I guess, her normal self from training from 100 miles and eating in that way, that's a very different eating pattern than I would have in a transformation or in everyday life. Anyone would have. Yeah,
you helped to fuel her 100-mile race. Like, you helped with the fuel program. Like how much fuel does running 100 miles take? Like, that seems like intense.
Yeah,
like, for training for that, she was running almost a marathon a week at one point. That was for what I remember. Like, it was crazy. The peak of her training for that, before she had to ramp it down to get ready for the actual race, was crazy, volume wise.
Yeah, I mean, Marcella, when it comes to like your training volume and your food volume, it's gonna be like just throwing things into the bucket. Like, you're just gonna be like, you're not gonna worry so much about what you're doing or what you're taking in. You're just gonna worry about making sure that your body isn't breaking down. So you have to make sure that you're taking in enough fuel to allow yourself the proper recovery and energy for that training period, but then also for the 100-mile race at the end. So the importance after that would be, she probably spent a whole lot of time getting back to just like almost replenishing her body for a long time after that 100 miles.
Right. So now let's look at the other way. By the time this comes out, it'll probably be a week or two post shred. So people who are listening, my shredders who are listening, and Dani's shredders and the Garage Gym shredders, you'll have indulged, I'm sure, by now, and you'll be looking to kind of get back into the swing of things. So using Marcel as an example, maybe me an example, Nick is a great example of this. People who walk around, who generally walk around in pretty good shape. So it's much easier. So Marcella, the same thing. She's able to really rip back down, get back to where she walks around, close to where she's probably better than she would normally walk around. And so am I at this point right now. But like, it's easier to get to where you were from like a really good shape. But I think it's also easier for people who, let's say some beginners who might have come in here with, 40, 50 pounds to shred. Like, how it's also easier for them to go back the other way, right? Like, wherever you've spent the most time, your body has spent the most time, I guess, is where you're most likely to get if you lose track. Yeah.
What do you mean?
So if I've walked around 40 pounds overweight for 30 years of my life, 50 pounds overweight 30 years of my life, 6 weeks of eating healthy, maybe I cut 15 pounds, 20 pounds. If you're going to start drastic, maybe 10 pounds, which is very good. It's going to be very easy for me to regain those 10 pounds as it was for me to maybe lose 10 pounds, because I usually walk around a little bit lighter than I was at the point where we started at the nutrition with me.
Yeah, I think that most of it has to do with your habits, right? So a lot of times we can get lost for a really long time in getting caught up in a lot of things. So a lot of times people who are caught up in maybe just the busyness of life, they notice that they don't notice so much as how the weight creeps up or their habits kind of slow down because they're so busy, and then all of a sudden they're like, I don't know how I gained that much weight in that amount of time. So whereas your lifestyle revolves around the gym, and you live with me, so you have to eat certain foods because that's the only foods that I buy. And so I think that for you to kind of stay in the range most of the time is a little bit easier than maybe someone who isn't necessarily like immersed in the healthy habits and kind of the conversation all the time and being in the gym all the time. So especially with the beginners, when they come in, they're thinking, okay, like, I know at some point, like, I was eating healthy in my life. That's what I want to get back to. And however long that time has lapsed, it's hard to just all of a sudden, it's not like a light switch where you're going to flip the switch and you're going to do all of these amazing habits all of a sudden. So the chances of going from a transformation to kind of falling back into your normal habits when you don't have the accountability of us checking in on you, or the thought of like, okay, I only have this much of a timeline. Yeah, certainly that's going to make a big difference with people who are who have been kind of lost for a little while, right? It's certainly going to take a lot more effort from them to stay on the path,
right,
instead of revert back.
Yes. Irvin just gave the like, don't hit the table, Dani.
Oh,
look.
well,
Right there.
I'm a violent person.
She smacked it. So for anybody who might have laughed at the part where Dani says, I don't have a choice, that she buys all the groceries, it's crazy to think that that is the case. Because when I met Dani, she lived off cigarettes and Vector. So to see that now, and then, you know, for the majority of our relationship, I was doing a lot of the groceries and a lot of the cooking. And now, since we've gone to the homeschooling, I've taken... you've kind of stepped your role down a little bit as far as being here in the gym training people, and I've kind of increased my role. You've really taken over the groceries, and you've taken over the groceries for a while, but you've actually taken over the majority of our cooking, which has been like amazing for me. It's making my life very easy. But like, how's that transformation happen? Where do you think the big steps for you have happened, and even just your ability in the kitchen? It's not that you were ever a bad cook; you just didn't cook that often. And now you do it, and like, you do it well. It's been great. Where have you learned the most, maybe? Watch.
Well,
don't give me that look. You know it's fucking true. I don't know why you act like this isn't true.
No. I'm just gonna say that you have told me that my food is not always like super, like, it's edible. It's edible. Usually.
It's more than edible. It's just very like, it's like, you know, it's.
I cook for survival.
Yes.
I don't cook for you know, a cookbook, let's say,
The
or
presentation isn't. You know, you might not be getting the presentation points, but.
No.
Anyways, before we get into a fight on in front of Irvin again, let's go with it.
Yeah. No, I think that, like, okay, so when you go from, like, when I was living on my own, when you're living on your own when you're quite young, and I was working shift work, and I mean, cooking for one is just not necessarily the easiest thing. And I think most people would say that too, is like, it's not, you're not super motivated to make homemade this, homemade that, if you're in that position. So you're living on your own, so you're only cooking for one, then you're working shift work, so you're all over the map. And to be honest, in that job, it wasn't necessarily always the most encouraged behavior. Most of the behaviors of, like, being a cop is like, you're going to go out drinking a lot, and you're going to eat a lot of crap, and you're going to be on the road, so you're just going to pick stuff up. So it was like being 21 years old and living by yourself, and that's kind of just what you adopt. So I think that was the scenario at the time. And although I was always athletic, I was always fit, that's probably something that a lot of people rely on as well, is like being just relying on, like, well, I've played sports my whole life, like I'm fine, like I can run, I can jump, I can do all these things. So I think then as the time went on, and as, like, with the gym, and with getting fitter, and getting stronger, and getting healthier, and making it a priority for just us, or myself anyways, as you get older, you think about those things. And then as you become a mom, you think about those things. And then you want that for your family. So I think that's where that like timeline went. So truly, it just makes sense that the way that our lifestyle works is you are potentially more at the gym, or you are more out of the home, let's say, doing whatever you're doing the Tango One stuff, doing the garage gym stuff. So you have a lot more of appointments. You have a lot more hours in the gym, on the floor maybe. So that...
Yeah, just throw that caveat in. On the floor maybe. Anyways, keep going.
I'm going to hit this fucking table.
Just can't give me a win. Has to throw in a little asterisk on it anyways.
You like to wear your fancy clothes and do meetings. That's what I'm saying. So I'm at home, and I'm with the kids, and I'm going grocery shopping anyways. And most of the time, if we have, you know, dinner lined up, it's just easier that way. So that's kind of how that became the case as well. So it's always about what's more convenient, what works for your family, and what listen, I'm not going to say to you like, I made dinner last night, so tomorrow night you're making dinner regardless of what you're doing. That's just not the way that our lives work. So to me, if I'm at home and I have the kids and I know that my day doesn't involve what your day involves of being outside the house, then that's kind of just the path I take. So I just say, like, think in my head, okay, well, I should get dinner ready because I know that you have this, that, and the other thing. I know that I'm going to be home anyways, teaching the kids or doing some phone calls with clients or what have you, or in and out of the house. So it just kind of, that's the way we pick each other up, right?
Yeah, no, agreed. And since the summer, we have had a lot going on, that's for sure. So we've had like the gym open, close, whatever we were at some point. And, you know, we came back from a trip. I'm actually leaving to head up to the cottage tomorrow with the boys. And
is that why you're dressed like that?
My best buddies. Yeah. This is very cottagey. I'm actually going to see Mackie after to buy a flannel shirt for the cottage so I can make some content, you know. Anyways, we've had a lot going on. We chose to keep the children home and homeschool. We chose not to get vaccinated, which hasn't been the easiest choice as they continue to lock down on us dirty people in our terribly healthy ways. And we've chose another thing we took on was to take on the 75 hard challenge. So the 75 hard challenge, for those of you guys that don't know, it's 75 days. We decided to start it in August, and we'll get into that maybe a little bit. So I'll just tell you the challenge. So 75 days, you guys heard me talk about it a little bit. It's from a guy named Andy Frisella. It's a cool thing. It doesn't cost money. It wasn't no big deal. And we did we had to do 2 workouts a day, 45 minutes each. And one had to be outside. They also couldn't be back to back, which proved to be a big challenge, not to be able to just work out for an hour and a half straight, like going for a bike ride or whatever. We had to follow a meal plan or some type of nutrition. Oh, what else do we have to do? I should know this since I've been doing it for 74 and a half fucking days right now.
Drink a gallon of water.
Drink a gallon of water, no booze, no cheap meals, and read 10 pages of a book a day. Mm-hmm. And I got them all right.
Yep, I think so.
Yeah, so today is like, right now is day 74 and a half of our 75 days, and we made it. We chose, which a lot of people, and hearing people with the shred and hearing people with 75 hard and all those things, we chose to do it in the summer. We chose to start it in the summer and work it right through to now, which meant that we went through August, my birthday, fantasy football, we've had a couple other, Thanksgiving was a big one. A couple other big events. We went to a wedding together last weekend, which I said is the last time I'll ever do a wedding sober. But everything other than that has been pretty good, yet challenging. So let's just talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about where our obstacles came and where maybe the things that we're most proud of or going forward. Because for me, it was big. This is a big deal. And I'm very proud of what we did together. And I'm very proud of how we did it and when we did it. And I don't know what's going to happen going forward, but I think a lot of these habits, I think, are here now to stay. So let's talk about whichever one you want to talk about first. You go ahead. Take the lead.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's start with reading, I guess. So I love to read. When thinking of this challenge, I took one of the books that, so Andrew Frisella writes the 75 Hard. There's an actual book, and it explains all of the questions and answers that you might think of while doing the challenge, and it explains the background behind it. So the whole idea behind it was because one of our members had done it, and I knew about him doing it, and I was really impressed by what he had accomplished, and I was very
Sandra,
proud of him.
He's put it all out there. You don't have to disguise his name.
Well, I don't know. It's your show. So I was very proud of Sandro, and I was very just like, I'm not a person who thinks like, I'm not a person who would do like 100-mile race. That's not my thing. I don't strive to do like perhaps challenges unless I think I can really get a lot out of them. I'm not just going to put some arbitrary challenge out there because I want to do a challenge. So this one, to me, I was kind of picking Sandro's brain, and he offered to lend me his book, and so I read about it, and I really liked the idea behind all of those things because, well, for one, a lot of the habits that we already kind of encompass, they're already parts of those. Of the challenge is already part of our daily life, but in doing it every single day for 7 days a week for 75 days, it's a very long time. And what I notice especially is that with my body, and I know a lot of women talk about this, is they don't notice results fast enough when they're trying to do something. But what I've noticed myself is that if you are very consistent over a long period of time, that is the major player in the game. So I was thinking that 75 days, although seems long for a lot of things, I thought that it was a reasonable amount to really get far. So instead of doing like a 30-day challenge, even a 6-week challenge is a really good amount of time. But I think that if you are really set on making a lot of big changes, I think that the 75 days really exposed those. So, okay. Reading.
That's what you're...
Well, you didn't give me a chance to lead in with like what I wanted to talk about.
With reading? You were talking about reading. What was the reading?
I love reading, but I don't.
I love everything you said, but I just want to bring you back to the reading. So what was it?
But reading. Were we talking about reading?
Reading. Okay, let's skip reading. We read 10 pages a day.
No, I want to talk about reading.
All right, well then talk about it.
Can you tell we haven't drank in 74 and a half days? Okay, so reading. I love reading. And I don't give myself enough time because we all think that we should be doing other things that reading doesn't. Reading is like a pastime or something that's like nice to do for ourselves. But I think that it should be, especially with homeschooling as well, it should be more of our day. So I was happy to have this in the challenge because I like doing it anyway. So it gave me an excuse to have to do something I already love to do. Yeah,
the reading was not a chore, let's say. There was days when it was like, oh fuck, I still gotta read because I wasn't proactive enough. And almost everything I think we're gonna talk about in this was like, as long as you're proactive. We talk about this in everything we do in the TAC Life training, in the shreds, and the 6WTs, in the gym, is like being proactive early in the morning stops you from being reactive later, or in the afternoon, whatever that might be. So the days where I kind of put off reading on busy days, that's where it was like more of a challenging. Last night, reading at 11 o'clock at night was brutal. We'll talk about my last day. It was brutal. So anyways, but yeah, the reading for me was huge. And it had to be a self-development book too, which I think is important for people to realize. It wasn't just like storybooks.
How many books did you get through?
I think I went through 4 books. Pretty crazy.
Which ones?
Ooh, I don't even know. What was the first one I read? The Hero Code, which was good. I flew through that one. I was reading more than 10 pages. They were short pages. I'm reading the meditations one you gave me right now. I'm probably a quarter of the way through that and looking forward to finishing that up at the cottage. Read the other... What was the other book you gave me? It was the Daily Stoic.
Uh-huh.
You
read the Naval one.
The Naval one. That was amazing. The Naval... how do you say that last name? Ravikant, yeah. That book was unreal. That one was given me by Noah, who was a guest on the last podcast. And I'm reading the Daily Stoic right now, and I'm reading the Arnold Schwarzenegger Encyclopedia of Muscle Building or Muscle Training, which honestly, that one's just been kind of fun for me to read and learn and pick up a couple extra little tips. Some of it outdated, some of it very still plays into part. So that's been a good little thing. And the best part about this challenge has been our kids joining onto the reading challenge. So both of our boys took on the reading challenge for 75 days with us, and they're both very proud to be completing it today. And our oldest has been helping our youngest read, and our youngest's reading has come so long way. And our oldest is like 10 pages is like nothing at this point. He's reading 20 pages. He's got it done before we even ask. That part's been outstanding. So water, a lot of people find this it's probably our biggest complaint we get on challenges as it is. We always give the water challenge to our people on our shreds and our 6WT. Honestly, I didn't find this one to be terrible. Again, proactive was the key. What was your thoughts on water? Other than peeing in the middle of the night, that was brutal.
Yeah, water wasn't my easiest. I also feel like with water, you and I both drank the same amount.
Right,
same size.
I think I was winning on that one because I feel like you give me more water if that was a normal day, like a normal.
No,
challenge.
I feel like I would have less.
Oh.
So that's what the problem with having too much water sometimes is that we can feel dehydrated because we're kind of depleting ourselves all day if it's not necessary. So I do feel like in the summertime when we had some pretty intense workouts, or if it was a hot day, then yes, there would be times. And in the challenge, it couldn't be, you can't count your coffee towards your water. You can't count your EAAs towards your water or anything like that. So drinking that much water and then something else, other things on top of that. And if it's not a super hot day, I did find myself struggling with that. Just in the sense of like, I felt like I didn't need it. I didn't need that much. 1 gallon is a lot. And I feel like I just didn't need that much. So
yeah, it's for me, the water wasn't terrible. Some days it was. And yeah, like we keep saying, the proactiveness, you do start to like really like look forward to drinks that aren't water. So like, and you can't really have many drinks. So the HQ EAAs were amazing. Go to their website, Tango 15, if you want to grab some. I love the lollipop, is like one of my favorites. If you want to try that, the Sour Patch Kid one is actually delicious too. Sour Patch Kids. What's it called? No, it's one of those candies. Fuzzy Peach, yeah. Fuzzy Peaches and Sour Patch Kids is 2 things I cannot fucking wait to have this weekend. Maybe with the boys. But yeah.
Ooh, live it up.
Yeah, live it up a little bit. So let's move it on. So now we're talking about the workouts. So the workouts it's something that we do naturally, you and I. I didn't think they would be as hard as they were, and they weren't hard physically. So we should kind of mention to people, if you choose to do this, like, you need to be smart. We weren't out there killing it every single day. Dani in particular with her, her neck issues that we've talked about lots on this show. But even me with some pretty serious fitness goals, I realized real quick that I needed to switch things up, and I needed to make sure I was getting in and rest. Even long walks, 45-minute walks without a vest on. I was doing a lot of my walks weighted. The 45 minutes without a vest on some days were getting to me. Like, not getting to me mentally or getting to me, they were just like, I was sore and I was tired. And that was a challenge. This was 75 days of 2 workouts a day at different times of the day was definitely fatiguing, and really played into the fuel part, which I leaned into you a lot to be increasing my carbs or adjusting my proteins as we went along. How about you? What was your thoughts on that?
Yeah, for sure. Especially, so I feel like if you were a single person and depending on what your schedule looked like, I think that doing the 45-minute exercises in 2 periods. So you're supposed to have a gap between the two, like a couple hours at least. So I do find that like some days when I was at home with the kids and I know they're in tow, wherever I go, I am super limited to what I could do. However, that makes you think outside the box. So if you are doing something outside, we were able to get the kids outside even more so than we would normally get them outside, which is great. Which made it more enjoyable for us, which then led to more family time, or just like mom and boy time or whatever. But I did find that if you did procrastinate and you didn't particularly think ahead of time, then we were doing workouts late at night, or else I was waiting for Tony to get home, and so that I could go for a walk on my own, right? Because I'm not going to bring the kids on a 45-minute walk. They would be super enthused about that. So but yes, I do think also that taking into consideration, like Tony said about like you said about making sure that you aren't going a 10 out of 10 on every single workout, because you know you're going to be doing 2 a day for that long period of time. I think that you have to be smart about it. You could try to murder every single part of this challenge, and you could really get yourself in under the water.
Yeah, I think the pros for the 2 workouts a day far outweigh the cons though. So if I make that seem really difficult for people, and it's just like, it took me about 3 or 4 weeks to really get a system down where I was like, all right, listen, I'm going to lift my heavy weights, because I didn't want to give up. I didn't want to give up my lifting. That was kind of the 75 days. I didn't want to lose that part of it and lose a lot of strength over 75 days. And because that was long enough to lose. And so that part for me took a little bit of figuring out. The cool part is, like, one, not having to go twice a day would be great. Like, I want to keep the walking, and I loved walking. I particularly loved rucking. You guys heard Mike Leister on the podcast a few weeks ago, and the benefits of rucking are just amazing. And just the walking around, just being outside and away from everybody for a bit, or being outside and having the kids like ride ahead of us, you and I walking together, there was like a lot of great moments that came from that. A lot of discussion between you and I, like really good talks, just, hanging out, like kind of like spending more time, the time we probably should spend together, and a lot of more time spending time by yourself, which is also very important. I think people don't do. So those kind of things. But in the last, in 75 days, I've done spin. I've tried the Peloton thing. I've lifted a ton of weights, obviously. I've attended a lot of the garage and conditioning classes, which I don't usually do. I've done the UFC. or not UFC. I've done MMA fighting, right? We've been yoga at Katerra's. Like, we've just done so many different things. The walking, running, biking, the mountain biking. Like, we've done a million things. In particular, I've done a lot of these things, and it's been really refreshing. I just feel excited about fitness again. I feel excited, and like a lot of these things, like the fighting, maybe putting it on for the last 3 weeks and going 3 times a week while I was lifting might have put me to the edge last night, but that's kind of where it's at, and that part's been awesome. And it's introduced the kids to a lot of these things too. Like, the boys are constantly trying to tap each other out in the backyard now, which is, but in a controlled aggression kind of way.
No, I think that's important to note too, is that I loved the going for walks. I don't do that because I usually have the kids with me, so it's not an ideal situation to take 2 little ones on a 45-minute walk. But I loved going and having my own time to do that, and I loved going with just you and I sometimes. If the kids were, either at their grandparents' house or something like that, that was awesome to have time either on my own to just kind of decompress or listen to a podcast or listen to music, just being outside, which was great. And I think that also parlayed into the fact that we chose a time during the year that would have, yes, hot days, yes, rainy days, but like not in the dead of winter. That would be interesting to do a 75 challenge in a different time of year, because I think we picked a pretty good time, truly.
Yes.
For it not being like hot as fuck.
For this part of this challenge, I agree. Like the having to work out outside. I can't imagine a better time of year. Perhaps the spring, but it's a crapshoot then. It was a crapshoot now, but we also got very fucking lucky in terms of weather.
Yeah, we only had a couple days where you and I were like walking into the sleet,
pouring rain days, right? Like in the winter, this would definitely be a different thing. But like when you look at the whole challenge in its totality, to pick the right time of year never really seems to work, because so that part was in our favor, but probably our strength too. Like our strength isn't working out. So we picked our favorable conditions for probably our easiest task, and then the harder task that we're getting to next is the alcohol. So, and I think we picked probably the worst time for alcohol. But I don't know, like everybody, there's always a bad time if you're going to try to quit drinking, in terms of like, I have this and I have this, I have this. But summertime for us, hanging out with the neighbors by the pool, even though it's not like getting shit-faced out there by the pool every day, it's having a beer, it's having 3 beers, having a drink, having a glass of wine at the wedding, celebrating your birthdays and football season stuff. That was definitely not the most optimal timing, I guess, for us to quit drinking, but maybe the best time to do it, because I saw that as my greatest weakness. I still do, and I don't know what I'm going to do going forward. I have some real good decisions that I have to make, and to see how this goes, I think I'm going to give myself 30 days, and if I feel like I cannot keep this thing under control, and to the point where it's like I'm having a drink because I'm enjoying it rather than I'm having 20 drinks and ruining my next 3 days, then I think it's going to be time for me to call it quits in general. But for me, that part was, I wanted to do it when it was going to be the worst, and I think we did. And
well, I'm proud of you for doing it in the worst time, and I'm proud of you I knew that would be certainly, and I think that everyone going into it has their own thoughts of what would be most difficult for them, and I don't think you can assume that that's going to be hard for everyone, right? So like
right, like I don't think not drinking for 75 days is that hard for some people,
but
I'm
the proud of you. That's a long time. That's 75 days, a very long time. Have you ever gone 75 days without drinking before?
I've gone 7.5 days. Is that what you said? Because yes, I've done that, but no, I have not. And a lot of people's first question to us, with the popularity of the weed stores and all these things, like, what you guys doing drugs? Like, no, like we would, like, I don't think the idea of this challenge, it's not outlined in the book, and you guys who want to be the rules and the what if people can do it all you want, but it's not outlined in the book. But the idea is not to like start being intoxicated. I would say, like, I think if Frisella was to rewrite that book, he'd probably say, like, don't be intoxicated for 75 days.
I think you have to, like, when you're writing a book or a challenge,
under influence of a substance, maybe, because intoxicated is different. We know that from the law, right?
Yeah. No, I think that, like, if for him particularly, you have to pick and choose what you're gonna pick, and I think that also, if you're going to participate in a challenge, or if you're going to, people that know that if they've ever quit something, so most of the time if you've ever quit drinking and you've gone to like let's say a very major difference in the scale of like drinking to the point where you need to quit and then you quit. Sometimes it's replaced with another vice, let's say. So that could be sugar, that could be smoking, that could be all those things, right? So I think that what in the true spirit of this challenge, although the rule says no alcohol or cheat meals, like that whole scenario, like would you feel like you were truly doing the 75-day challenge if you decided that you weren't going to drink alcohol anymore, but that you were just going to, smoke weed every single night and like be just as intoxicated in a different sense? That's up to you, right? So I think that with that particular thing, I think he chose for the masses, and the masses drink alcohol in some capacity most of the time.
Yeah, I agree for sure. So then the alcohol for me kind of took care of a lot of the other things. Like cutting out the alcohol made me definitely able to, hit my workouts a little bit better and more accurately, stay on time, on track with like getting all these tasks done, and then the food. So that would kind of lead into the food. Not drinking really made it easier not to have the cheat meals. We do not preach here not having cheat meals, or not like a nutrition break, if you fucking PC people want to call it, whatever that is. But we don't preach that. We say, 80 to 90% lifestyle, 80, 90 or 2010, whatever it is for like, good choices to bad choices. But the food, dialing it in, that was a bigger challenge than I thought. Like opening the cabinets, and we don't have a lot of junk food in there, but even just looking and reaching in and grabbing like a lot of like, I don't know, chocolate chips, or like making the kids a grilled cheese the other day, ham and cheese, and I wanted to grab like a piece of cheese and just stuff it in my mouth so bad, right? Like that's kind of like the little shit that's what I'm really not good at. I don't really care about going to a party and eating a bunch of nachos and having some pizza and then getting back on track tomorrow. I'm really good at that, I think. But my problems have always been like the in-between meals, grabbing just a little bit of this, over and over and over through the course of the day. And crazy, I know you're talking with women, it maybe doesn't show as fast, but the bloating, and I don't know if you saw me with a shirt off, you see me with a shirt off. Everybody who listens to you probably see me with a shirt off a lot. The difference is crazy, like and I walk around what I think is pretty like lean looking, but how much the bloating, it's nuts. It's crazy what happens to your body without that sugar and a lot of extra shit.
Yeah, I think that with no alcohol and no crappy food, or food that's off of whatever meal plan that you're gonna go by, I suppose, that's gonna definitely make your body revert back to like what it should look like. And we were talking the other day about what your body looks like before you start drinking, and think of like what your natural body would look like before you started in your teens or in your 20s, and then noticing your shifts between the types of food that you're eating and the drinks that you're having. And then that's where that, I think, most of the time leads to the way that our bodies end up looking, because we're consuming all of these other things that are not good for our bodies and causing inflammation.
Yeah. So many people too, they talk about like, I don't have time to meal prep. I don't have time. That is the biggest crock of fucking shit. We've just like proven it. We're pretty busy people. I know I'm not the busiest of everybody on here, but you know what? A lot of you choose to be busy too, and that's a whole other fucking topic. Like, you're so proud. Good job. Good job for being so busy at nighttime, driving around all over the place to do all these things. Okay, great job. But for us, the meal prepping and the actual following this meal plan, that's a 2-day meal plan, saves me such a copious amount of time. It's insane. Like I spent more time like with all these extra tasks, 2 workouts a day, meal plans. I found myself just sitting so many times with like, oh, what do I want to do right now? Because I have all this time, because we weren't spending a lot of time like meal. And we did say that you were doing a lot of cooking, but we had to do a lot of cooking between us, like batch cooking, and then feeding the kids and stuff. It just seemed like we had so much more time than we normally do, even though we were doing so much more. So I think there's a lot to be said for that. And like, if you're somebody who's looking for a meal plan or like just nutrition, like Danny's the one to go to. I can tell you, like, it worked for me. And 3 times during this, it always was like, okay, I'm exhausted now. Why am I so tired? Why am I so sore? Food. It comes down to food a lot of those times. And it was like, hey, can you take a look at this? I'm feeling like I don't have enough energy. She'd switch things around just a little bit, and boom, I'm back on track and feeling great. It's pretty crazy how that's like the first place you should look, I guess, for answers.
Yeah, I think in my experience with this challenge, I didn't find myself having more time because I was just because of being at home and trying to work and teach the kids and cook and do all of those things. But I do think that I noticed that uh, so I'm a terribly disorganized person. Um, I definitely find myself having to write a lot of things down to keep myself organized. And I found that I got better organized because I had to. So for me, I didn't find that I had more time. I just found that I maybe organized my time a little bit better than I had previous, uh, so that I knew that I could have enough food ready for you, ready for myself, ready for the kids, and that if I need to go to the grocery store, I had to have time to do that. So I think that that was my case. And then I do think that with what you're talking about the first place to look is the nutrition so that you can feel better and look better. That's certainly always the case, because if you are omitting the things that you shouldn't be eating anyways, if you're eating, so for me with food, I wasn't on a meal plan. I'm kind of trying to work around some better hormone scenarios for myself. So for me, it wasn't about being super strict with like, you have to eat this, 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 and this. For me, it was more so like, I'm avoiding this, 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 and this. So I'm eating as I normally would, but I am avoiding certain things. For instance, dairy. For instance, supplements like whey protein. So that created its own challenge in itself. But I think that I noticed big differences in my energy and in my mood and in my hormones right away, because I was flipping the switch with the choices I was making as well. So where you were making choices on maybe your quantities that were making you feel better, for me it was the types of choices.
The what you were eating. Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good. So I think we've kind of beaten that challenge to death, but the biggest thing is sort of takeaways for me, and I think this is a lesson that can be learned for anybody who's listening, who the people who are just doing everything for everybody all the time, those people that I just gave the award to for being so busy, is that Dani and I, by focusing, and it wasn't focusing on each other, it was focusing on ourselves individually as this challenge. What happened was, one, business for the Tango One Solutions, like, it tripled. It's insane. Like the business, the Tack Life stuff, the mentorship programs, the opportunities that have come from this, going into, now helping some businesses and doing some talks there, some keynote speaking things that have come up, have like literally tripled in 75 days. Our relationship, it feels better. Like we are communicating better than we ever have. Our house is cleaner. Like my office is more organized. It like all these like great things that we did for ourselves transcended. And you know what? Our kids are happier. Our kids are the best they've ever been behaved. They like, not that they're ever bad, but their improvement is that their like behavior is actually even skyrocketed. They seem smarter, more fulfilled, and we're giving them better attention. Like doing all this stuff for me and you doing it for you has transcended just so massively. And so like, if you're worried about you don't have enough time and you got to do all this, do it for you, and everybody else benefits. It's just crazy. And that, I think, would you agree? Is that how you feel? Like your fuel program has seemed to taken off. Like the garage gym has filled up. Like everything seems to be working out very well because we're cleaning our own doorsteps, I guess.
Yeah, I think that by realizing your priorities, right? So a lot of times you can get lost with like, okay, so let's say you decide that you're going to have a whole bunch of drinks, then that kind of lingers for a few days. You don't feel so good. You don't feel super motivated. You don't feel super organized. You put things on the back burner. That's one thing. If you're eating like crap, then you also feel those things lagging. So your body doesn't feel good. That doesn't necessarily motivate you to do more and to change what you're eating. Usually you end up going to convenience foods. Usually you end up maybe making choices you wouldn't normally make. So that's one thing that ends up being kind of parlays into your daily life. So I think that becoming more clear, becoming more fueled, becoming more aware of other things that really make you better will then translate into making the other people around you better. So the boys, our focused time with them, that's what makes them love being a part of our family and not want to maybe like
hide in the screen.
Yeah, act up or do things, or they want to be with us all the time because we are giving them directed attention, because we are giving ourselves direct attention, right?
Yeah. They go hand in hand. They're handcuffed together, those things. And I hope that this wasn't about the 75 hard, this podcast. This is about choosing some habits for yourself, being a little bit more selfish and a little less selfless, and how that can really transcend everything. And going, it doesn't have to be 75 hard with 6 different things. Pick 1 or 2 habits and go fucking all in on them, and let it see how that plays out and how that can improve your life. And maybe you'll learn something along the way, and it gets kind of addictive. It's like you like, yeah, I want to keep doing a lot of these things. Tonight I leave, so in like 8 hours basically our challenge is over, it feels like. At 4 o'clock I leave today for a cottage up north, and we'll probably arrive just after midnight, which means that I will probably have 1 cocktail with my buddies before we crash out after our 9-hour drive. Well, tonight 1, but I'm sure it's some more. What is going to be the first? I'm going with a Manhattan. 100% I'm going with the Manhattan tonight. What's your what's going to be
Have
your
you been
first,
thinking about this?
Yeah, I have been. What's your first drink that you're going to have, or meal or anything? What's your first break of the 75 hard rules that you're going to do? Not work out twice tomorrow, maybe.
Yeah, I don't think it'll have to do with maybe necessarily food or drink. I think that for me, I notice and this is because it's so personal, I think that everyone has their own thing. I think that maybe having like a few days of just being gentle and going for walks is great, and maybe taking a longer walk, but maybe not doing the split workouts. Maybe taking a little bit of a couple of days of like not 2 workouts. But I like the way that I feel because because of all those other things. So I don't plan to really do a whole lot, especially when you're gone. Like there's not really going to be like any major times where we're going to sit down and have a bottle of wine or anything like that. So I probably won't be sitting down sipping a tequila by myself. So that's what
you really have changed.
That's what my first thing would
I'll
be.
tell you, if you and the kids were gone away, that's the fucking first thing I would do.
And that's why we're so different, babe.
Yes. On that note, difference is key. Keeps us going. You've heard us fight, but this is about the extent of our fights. This is about as loud or as mean as they get for the most part. So anyways, thanks for coming in on us with us today, Dani, and thank you everybody who's listening for your nonstop support of Dani and I, the Garage Gym, Tango One Solutions, everything that you do. Remember, every show is sponsored also by 10,000 Clothing Company. Dani can attest for this. This is the best sports performance gear for men around. If you guys want to go, you can hit them up, Tango 15. And thank you to Irvin, IB Marketing, for suiting this out and for sorting out our audio issues. We hope, because this is a good episode. Thanks for coming on, babe.
Thank you.
All right, cheers.
Now's the time to do more and be more.